it's an interesting political dynamic, and I think this definitely hit on the working class's view of Reagan.
Yes, I think you're right. That much I think we can agree on. The movie was kind of the backdrop setting, the 80s. Yeah. The working man is being neglected. But what is the Joker? Like, what does he serve? Like, think of the past iterations of the Joker. Mm-hmm. I think
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, do you think this plays into any of the old Joker tropes? Or
so there's really been 4.
Okay.
Jared Leto in Suicide Squad
doesn't count.
It failed. There was Jack Nicholson playing Jack Napier, who is a mob boss who Batman inadvertently knocks into a vat of acid, which was one of the origin stories of the Joker through the comics. Mm-hmm. And he comes out crazy, looks deformed, looks like a clown now, and he just owns that. I'm going to be a clown, and he takes over the mob. And he's just obsessed with Batman and trying to kill Batman. And so Batman inadvertently creates the Joker. So that was one. There was number 2. It's kind of weird because that was the one that we got at the end of the 80s, at the end of the Reagan years. Mm-hmm. It was 89, I think, 88 or 89 when Tim Burton's Batman came out. The second was our Joker that we grew up with in the 90s in the cartoon. Voiced by Mark Hamill, largely based on that character,
the mobster guy.
He was based on Jack Nicholson, who was based on the comics. They were trying to keep him as close to the comics as they could, but the Mark Hamill's one was more. I guess he wasn't more cruel than Jack Nicholson, but he was cruel. But he just and things were funny. But he was he knew he was weaker than Batman, and he was constantly. Like he would get in trouble and he would call out to Batman to save him. Like if there was another villain who was getting the best of him, he would call for Batman to save him, and Batman would come and save him. So he was those two were very similar. I think comparing those two would be like kind of comparing the Clinton years and the Reagan years. Like they seem to be so different on paper, but they're pretty similar in a lot of respects, especially economically. But then Heath Ledger's Joker, I think, was the biggest. He deviated the most from the comics. He deviated the most from the 2 previous iterations of it, and he was no backstory, no origin. We have no idea who he is, no idea where he came from. He can't be reasoned with. He can't be bribed. He can't be. We can't have. The only thing we can do is defeat him. We have to be stronger, smarter, and crush him, or else we have no other option. We can't live with him.
Right.
It was the...
It seems like, to me, my understanding was that he represented jihadist terrorism.
That was Andrew Klavan's take. Did you read Klavan's article on the Batman, on the Dark Knight? Yeah, he basically said the Dark Knight was a defense of George Bush, which is very interesting.
I think that's got... I mean, I see no other way of reading that.
Well, I mean, there's the... Patriot Act, which was that big machine that Morgan Freeman's character says, Lucius Fox, he's like, I'll only help you if you agree we're going to destroy this when it's over. Of course, they didn't put the sunsets into the Patriot Act, but that was kind of like, Patriot Act we need so long as it doesn't go on forever. Right. And yeah, Alfred's famous line, some men just want to watch the world burn. He said, did you finally catch him? Talking about the guy who he was comparing the Joker to. He said, yeah, we caught him. We had to burn the forest to the ground. It was the guy who was in the forest. They thought somebody was stealing these rubies, but no, he was just stealing the rubies because he wanted to beat up the people he was stealing the rubies from. He was just throwing them out. We eventually caught him by burning the forest to the ground. And that was the background of Heath Ledger's Joker. I think you're right. He was a terrorist. He was blowing stuff up and making, you have to do this or else I'm going to kill this guy. But what the main difference between all of the previous iterations of the Joker and Joaquin Phoenix, I think this is enormously important, was this movie was not a Batman movie. It was a Joker movie.
Yeah, it's true.
In every previous iteration, the Joker served exclusively as a foil to Batman. He does not make sense. You're not supposed to know why he's doing what he's doing. It's just Batman takes everything super seriously. Joker laughs at everything. Batman values human life so much that he never kills people. He just does whatever he can. He ties them up and turns them over to the cops, to great pain to himself, even risking failure. Right. The Joker kills arbitrarily. He'll kill his henchmen for no reason. Right. You know, he has totally no value of human life. And so he's only there to kind of justify, like, he's a clown. Batman is a terrifying creature of the night. You know, he's only there to serve as a foil to the Bat, which is why I think the Jake Napier character of Jack Nicholson is the most common origin story for the Joker. Batman created the Joker. You know, the fact that there is Batman makes the joke, like, Batman's existence makes the Joker happen.
Right, as the opposite, like equal and opposite.
Right, the kind of right. He's the yin to his yang. The Dark Knight wasn't that way, really. I mean, they don't tell you his origin story. Batman didn't create that Joker. Batman just had to deal with that Joker. And in fact, it's different. The Dark Knight trilogy, the second one, The Dark Knight, which is by far the best, actually is a deviation from the storyline. The story arc is Ra's al Ghul, the League of Shadows. Batman breaks from them and says, no, Gotham's worth saving, and he fights to save Gotham, and now he has to compete against the League of Shadows. And it ends with Ra's al Ghul's daughter finishing her father's work, and he has to save Gotham again from them. He's succeeding. In the second one, he's winning. He and Harvey Dent have totally gotten rid of all of Ra's al Ghul's crime that he's planted in Gotham, and they're winning the battle.
Sort of. You're saying at the end of the movie, the Heath Ledger movie, they're winning? Or
No, at the start of the movie.
Oh, in the start
of the movie. The plot starts with Batman saying, he must increase and I must decrease. Batman wanted to be the John the Baptist to Harvey Dent.
Right, yeah.
You know, we now have a lawyer who's fair and just and willing to do what's necessary, but he's bringing about, and he's somebody that people can believe in. They can't believe in a man in a bat suit, always going to be there to save them. They got to believe in truth, justice, the system works. The cops can be trusted. And in comes the Joker. And the Joker's first enemy is not Batman. It's all of the other criminals. He deals with all the other criminals.
Right.
You know, this city deserves a better class of criminal. They all can be bought. You know, right. So, and at first he's like, well, you guys need to kill the Batman, but he doesn't seem like he ever even intended to kill the Batman. He's like, here's my card, and it's just a Joker card. Like, they're not going to be able to contact him to deal with him. When they finally do make a deal with him, they give him all the money he was demanding. He sets it all on fire and then kills the guy. You know? So it's like he was there to make Batman say, no, the system doesn't always work. You have to lie, cheat, steal, kill. Most importantly, kill for the system to work. He's like, I only have one, Batman tells the Joker, I only have one rule. He said, well, tonight you're going to break your one rule. You know, and so that storyline basically breaks and says, no. Just like the war on terror. We don't torture people. Well, waterboarding, we kind of need to waterboard. You know,
right? Yeah.
The Bill of Rights is the most important thing. All of
never
these
spy on
rights.
citizen.
Yeah, we never spy on our citizens. Well, we kind of need a Patriot Act right now. That was kind of the theme. It was saying, you have to win. The Joker's going to win if we aren't willing to fight and stoop at least close to his level to fight. Mm-hmm. And sometimes to win, you have to burn the forest to the ground. You know that,
or bomb Dresden or something like that.
Well, and so that was how, you know, with he corrupts Harvey Dent. And so Batman says, okay, I'm willing to be the Dark Knight to, like he said, at the end of the Dark Knight, we're talking about the Dark Knight.
Yeah.
I still think it was a better movie than the Joker, although Joker was a really good movie. The end of the Dark Knight, he's praising Harvey Dent publicly because his reputation is important for Gotham. And he says he wasn't the hero we needed. He wasn't the hero we deserved, but he was the hero we needed, which was, of course, a lie. then privately to his son as Batman rides off, he's the hero Gotham deserves, but not the one she needs right now. Right? So he's not a hero. He's a silent guardian, a dark knight. And so that was kind of, I think, another defense of George Bush. It's like, okay, I'll let my approval rating go to 20%. We're going to win the war on terror.
Right.
And
we can argue over how accurate that is.
Right, but that was kind of the message of, and all that to say, the Joker in that movie was not created by Batman. Osama bin Laden, George Bush didn't create Osama bin Laden. George Bush had to deal with Osama bin Laden.
Right.
Batman created the Joker in Tim Burton's series because it's just kind of light and dark. For every good, there's an evil.
So where are you going with that?
This movie,
Okay.
Batman doesn't create the Joker. Joker creates Batman. It's a complete reverse.
Okay.
Right? The Joker has his own issues. He's figuring out how to deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
He deals with them exactly the way our culture has decided since the 60s, this is how you deal with stuff.
In what way? What do you mean? I'm not
I'll elaborate on that in just a minute. But in so doing, he causes riots and he kills this little boy's parents. And he creates the necessity for Batman. It was the exact reverse of the normal story. Instead of it being Batman creating the Joker and now he has to deal with him, or the way the Dark Knight portrayed it, Batman just now encounters the Joker and has to deal with him. This was the Joker created the Batman. And that, I think, is the main theme of the movie, was the Joker kind of realizing, I'm in pain constantly. I'm taking these drugs. I have never had a happy day in my life. He tells the therapist, you're asking if I've had any negative thoughts. All I have are negative thoughts. He is getting beat up and he finally defends himself. He shoots the guy, defends himself. He shoots the other guy, still in self-defense, and it feels kind of good. He chases the third guy down and kills him in cold blood. And he goes into that bathroom. And you remember what he starts doing in that bathroom scene?
Dance. He dances in front of the mirror.
Have you ever seen somebody dance like that before?
No.
Somebody posted on Twitter, I think it was just today, this left-wing protest of either Donald Trump or Brexit.
Oh,
or something.
yeah, I saw the video.
And they're all kind of just out there doing their little...
Whatever.
We're just expressing
ourselves.
ourselves. Yeah. Exactly. It was self-expression. Of course, they all look exactly the same, but they're expressing themselves. Mm-hmm. And I remember a friend in high school used to take me to these Grateful Dead acoustic cover bands. And then they'd have a big drum circle and people would just bang the drum. And everybody's expressing themselves. They all danced. They looked just like what the Joker was doing. And I actually heard an interview with Joaquin Phoenix and then an interview with, I can't believe we've forgotten the director's name.
Todd Phillips, I think. I looked it up just a time ago.
And when they were filming that scene, the way the script had it was Joaquin Phoenix, Arthur Fleck, gets to the bathroom and just kind of looks at himself in the mirror and kind of like, Jean Valjean, what have I done? And he has to kind of come to terms with it. And then from there, he kind of decides to become the Joker. They're like, it just doesn't feel right for him to have that. Just do whatever comes natural. And Joaquin Phoenix started doing that little dance. And like, I love it. Keep it. And then the dance kind of became, I just remember, like, still right now, looking back at the movie, you totally sympathize with him. Mm-hmm. And it's not that you don't just sympathize. You kind of root for him. Like, you are happy for him.
Yeah,
like,
I will say it was the first Joker where I felt like I understood his dancing. Like, because all the Jokers do that, like, ha, ha, or whatever, that kind of thing. He was the first one who I was kind of like, I can totally see why he's doing
like
this.
When Jack Nicholson does that, you're kind of like, it's funny because it's Jack Nicholson, but like, he's an evil guy and you're going to punch him.
Yeah.
You're waiting for Batman to come in and just punch him.
Yeah.
But in this one, you're like, he's free, man. He is freer than he's ever been. He's liberated. He is expressing himself. He matters. People notice him. And that staircase, every time he's depressed, he has to walk up those stairs, and he's just barely able to get through his life, and he's struggling. He's going up. When he's the Joker, he's skipping and dancing down the stairs.
Yeah,
he's just coasting. He's just free. He's liberated. And that attitude creates Batman. That liberty, that 1960s love, express yourself, individuality is the most important thing in the entire world, leads to death and destruction. There's a way which seems right unto a man, and its end is destruction.
Right.
That created the need for what did come in the 80s and 90s. Prison reform.
Yep.
Rudy Giuliani. Increased policing. Batman. That little kid, he's like, put on a happy face, right? Come on, can't you join me in being liberated like all the rest of us? Little kid says, I'm going to go live in a dark cave and come out at night and scare the heck out of people like you, who are just prancing around, expressing yourself, not caring for the sanctity of human life, not caring for justice and righteousness. Right? And so that to me was what this movie was saying was, this is, and you totally sympathize with him because he does have a case to make. He has been overlooked by society. He is mentally ill and in pain and in just been given a raw deal, and it feels good to just let go and, you know what, punch the guy. You know what, the guy who turned you in for the gun that he gave you and said that you asked for to buy, kill that guy. Just beat his head into the wall and then just dance. Just dance, man. Dance like nobody's watching. That's what the movie was saying. Get there. Express yourself. And you're going to create Batman.
I mean, I do see a lot of that now. When I was first trying to parse the movie myself, I was trying to connect it to today's politics, and it seems like the director deliberately wouldn't allow you to put one or the other sides.
That's what I was meaning by saying it wasn't political. It wasn't that it wasn't political. It wasn't making any kind of political statement. He wasn't trying to make a political statement. He didn't want half the country to come to the movie and say, "Here we go again, another indictment of Trump." You know.
Right. Well, and this was also why I went into the movie expecting it to be deliberately right-wing, because you had the same kind of phenomenon you have a lot of times when you have a slightly right-leaning film. You have the critics saying it's terrible and the viewers saying it's awesome. And we kind of had a little bit of that. It was like 60% or something by the critics and then 90% for viewers or something like that.
Right.
And so I went in thinking it was going to be right-wing. But it wasn't. It had people in the crowd saying resist. It had people in the crowd being deplorables.
Right. That could have been the Tea Party or Occupy Wall Street.
Right. You definitely see some of the Trumpiness in his clown friends, in the white clown circle, the circle of, I would say, deplorables. But then you also have
those
the people...
crazy savages out there. You need to have a gun.
But the ones who riot and then support the Joker look like the leftist rioters in some way, and they held resist signs and stuff like that. They have the masks and they go out and like Antifa essentially. And so I couldn't see him. I saw the director deliberately not allowing that, and yet, of course, in our particular climate, the left is still going to hate that because if you're not ideological. If you're not an ideologically left movie in a pure sense, you're
far right. Yeah.
Right. You can't. They won't endorse a movie that allows you to see a Trump supporter in a even sympathetic way. Mm-hmm. And they definitely saw that the Joker was a white guy with the equivalent of an opioid addiction, that kind of thing. And I think that's the reason why they could not give it a.
They didn't want you to sympathize with a person like that.
Which, by the way, it is funny to me how much that's like the criticism that Klavan, to bring up Klavan again, that Klavan had of Christian movies, how they're too unidirectional and everything has to always work out in the end and always has to follow rigid orthodoxy and all of that.
Right.
I think you kind of have criticized that particular criticism of Christian movies, but what I see as being accurate in that is the fact that you have to have the certain set of orthodoxies checked before the movie is acceptable to that viewing public. And I think that's kind of what's going on the left right now. You have to have
There's
a certain
Puritans,
victim.
Like you can't have a good, solid Christian movie where they say the F word.
Right.
Just they're going to throw it in the trash, no matter how good the Christian message is. If they had said the F word in Lord of the Rings,
No
the hard
Christians.
evangelicals are not going to support the Lord of the
Right.
Rings. But what you're saying is the leftists are the hardest Puritans we have right now.
Pretty much. And so that's why I kind of went into it expecting it to be right-wing, but he didn't let you see it that way. But I do think you put an interesting spin on it, because I saw the 80s thing. It was obviously set in the 80s, critical of the way the Reagan era and...
It was pre-Reagan 80s. It was like the transition from the 70s
Well,
to the 80s.
Reagan is 1980, right?
Right.
He comes in right then.
Reagan was inaugurated in 81. The movie's set in 81.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, okay. But yeah, I see
it's pre-Giuliani New York.
But anyway, I saw in the straight-laced Thomas Wayne a guy with that kind of parted haircut that Reagan would have had.
Well, the yuppies on the subway were the yuppies of the Reagan era.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I saw that, but I didn't really catch on to that perhaps the deplorables and the leftist mobs today are both descendants of the 60s. Mm-hmm. And that kind of devaluation of human life, the devaluation of tradition, just the kind of lives that you see among Trump supporters are not pre-60s, 1950s.
Best, right.
Yeah, those are not. They are ones who don't get the benefits of the 1960s free love society. They're the incels, the ones that are like upset that they're not getting the benefits and the fruits of the 1960s. But they're still post-1960s, and I didn't really pick up on that until you said it. I think that's accurate. The working class struggle is a post-60s destroyed culture that's just mad about the fact that their culture is worthless, that they're appealing to things like drugs to get them through and things like that. I don't know. It was an interesting thought I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just even now, when I remember the movie, I remember the face he's always making, the pain, the angst, the sadness, all just melting away when he's got the clown makeup on and he's killing the people who bother him. You know, he is liberated, man. And you in your conscience, you know you wouldn't do that. And if somebody did that, you would turn them into the cops. But the movie did a great job of making you feel a sense of relief. Like, oh man, he is actually getting delivered from this oppression he was in by look how liberated he is. You know, he's so happy. He's so free. He's dancing and he's you know, and we should point out that the movie does kind of, at the end, throw a lot of question marks on what was going on.
Oh, right. You mean like the fact that he never really had a girlfriend?
Yeah, it pretty clearly indicates that was in his mind. Just like earlier in the movie, it kind of, without warning, just throws him into the studio talking to Robert De Niro's character. You know?
To me, it didn't seem like that was fake.
Which one?
Talking to the... going on TV and actually being on TV.
Even though it cuts right back to the room he's still sitting in with his mother watching the show? It was... No, at the end where he's actually on TV?
Where he shoots him, yeah.
Right,
that can't happen without... Right, go ahead.
I thought you were meaning early on.
The earlier flashback, right. That was definitely
just his imagination. And so it kind of gave a hint that...
Well, that was him needing to me, I got father figure.
Yes.
Right? He has no real
fantasy,
father,
though.
and he's fantasizing.
So as a tortured soul, he fantasizes.
He fantasizes about a father and having a wife.
No, but he doesn't fantasize about having the wife.
You don't consider that?
You don't know that that's a fantasy till later on in the movie.
True.
He goes.
Okay.
He commits the murders. Then he walks into the apartment and kisses the girl. Right.
Right.
You find out at the end this.
Well, that was my first hint that something isn't right. She was a plausible character until right then. And it was like, okay, that was weird. Either if they're trying to get us to buy that, something's off.
Right. But then with that in question, how did he just walk in there and talk to Thomas Wayne? You can't just talk to the richest man in town running for mayor while he's in the
Well, it
men's room.
showed him sneak in.
He kind of sneaks in, but it's like, was his mom telling the truth? Did they doctor the documents, or was this all just him? See, because at the end of the movie, he's like, "I thought of a joke, but you wouldn't get it," and he's in the exact same position as he was at the beginning of the movie, talking to a social worker.
So you think the whole thing's kind of... I'm not getting that.
So no. What I'm saying is the movie deliberately tells you, or the movie deliberately leaves you with how much of this is real events, how much of this is the Joker remembering events, how much of this is the Joker making stuff up to justify himself. That's how I left it with me. It's like, was he just fantasizing?
It was
that
confusing. It was confusing at the end when they had him back in his cell. And if you want to take that as the whole thing was fake from the get-go, or most of it was fake or whatever, I don't think you can go there. For one, it's, as I read in an article, and was a good point, you no longer have a movie about the Joker. You
it's
have
an
the
origin
movie
story.
About a guy who's insane and imagines himself as the Joker.
But it's an origin story. Right.
And so he invents his own origin story, kind of?
He remembers things such that it justifies a man who runs around laughing and killing. Right? And if everything in the story is exactly true, you sympathize with him. Right. I would have killed those yuppies on the subway too. They gave you a raw deal, man. And you are out there just finally being willing to express yourself, finally willing to give self-expression and be liberated and matter. People notice you now. I sympathize with you. And it's the Joker saying, the audience sympathizes with me. That's a funny joke. You care to tell me the joke? You wouldn't get it. So it doesn't tell you how much. It tells you some of what happened isn't true. I don't know how much of it. Yeah. But some of this isn't true.
To me, when I first get it, I kind of now at least see a plausibility
because
to that.
that's historically true of the Joker. There's a line in one of the famous Joker comics. It says, "If I have to have a past, I want it to be multiple choice."
Right.
And that was also huge with Heath Ledger's character. He tells the origin story of his father, who let's put a smile on that face, and he cuts him up. But then he tells the origin story of his wife, who he does it to himself because he doesn't want his wife to feel bad about her scars. And now I see the funniness. And he's about to say something, who knows, something totally different to Batman. He's like, "You know how I got these scars?" "No, but I know how I got these." Boom, and he hits him with those things. He doesn't. His origin is whatever he wants it to be.
Right. There's definitely that in the older films, and you're saying you could kind of apply that to this one. So I'm
saying the movie very cleverly, I think, puts a question mark at the end saying, "Now, do you believe him?"
Well, it definitely put a question mark because you have the footprints going there, and they're bloody footprints. Did he just kill the woman who... So they left it intentionally vague.
And you think he's escaping and becoming the Joker, but then now there's somebody chasing him around the ward.
Yeah.
Like,
It's intentionally left vague. I get that. But the way I had seen it at first was that most everything is true except the families he fantasizes. You have a guy who's basically a loner who imagines himself validated in all the ways that society tells you that you get validated.
He is fantasizing as a child when he's imagining himself, Robert De Niro saying,
he wasn't a child. He was still a grown man.
He was a grown man. What does Robert De Niro's character say to him? "If I would give all this up to have a son like you. You're a really good son to your mother."
Yeah, he wants the father and the validation. Yeah,
and
he gets an identity.
As soon as he kills, he grows up. He's not fantasizing about being a kid who has a dad who loves him. He's fantasizing about a man who can get a woman.
He doesn't have the girlfriend until after he kills someone?
He does not.
No. He meets the girl and has that moment with her before he kills.
Right. When she does the thing.
And he goes...
And then he does the... like that.
And so what I got out of that was this was the real interaction, and she kind of smiled, and
she was simply polite to him.
She was simply polite, and then she walked away, got out of there as fast as she could. but smiled at him, and he took from that, I got the tiniest bit of validation. Now I'm going to have this entire fantasy of having a meaningful relationship with a woman.
But he doesn't go in there.
Before it was a meaningful relationship with a father, now it's a meaningful relationship with a woman. And both of them are being one of them is being promised by media, and the other ones could be actually something that pulls him out of this whole thing, except that he imagines it.
But that's the point is he doesn't have that until the murder.
But he... Okay,
she is
you're saying the
unattainable.
fantasy doesn't happen. Okay, he comes back in and then just takes it after the murder.
Right, exactly. Yeah. He has killed somebody, and they're sitting there reading things like, I think, it's 3 less jerks in this world or something. Like she sympathizes with the clown, not realizing it's him, obviously, but that everything that he does with her is post becoming the Joker. And so his fantasy changes from a childish fantasy to an adult fantasy.
Yeah, I see that.
And so, even though he's not a good guy, he's almost a totally sympathetic character. And then at the end, they're like, "But is he telling the truth? How much of this is the truth?" It brought you back to he's not the Joker of the comics until the tail end of the movie, when you doubt his story. So I think that was intentional, just to kind of bring it back to maybe we can build a comic book universe out of this movie if we have the budget for it. But the important aspect of it was that this is the Joker creating Batman. It's like if The Dark Knight was a defense of of George W. Bush, this was a defense of Rudy Giuliani.
Make that case for me. How is it defend? Oh, it's saying
unless you're going to root against Batman,
right?
The Joker starts this revolution, and it ends up creating Batman.
Well, do they create enough sympathy for any of the rich characters to justify
just the boy? You don't have to sympathize with Thomas Wayne.
Yeah, but you don't even sympathize with the boy. He didn't do anything to the boy except...
I guess he's Batman. That's the point. You know, so the Joker is nothing without Batman.
Right.
The Joker is the main character of this movie, but the background is he's eventually going to be the nemesis to Batman.
I get that.
And so
but you're saying
he creates Batman.
Correct.
Batman can't be the bad guy. So unless you're going to say, I'm going to root for Arthur Fleck against Bruce Wayne, you have to side with Giuliani. You have to say, look, the chaos that's going on in the 70s.
The riots and all that.
We deserved what we got in the 80s. We needed the 80s to be what they were. We needed that little cute kid, Bruce Wayne, who's standing there mourning his parents, to grow up to be the baddest dude on the block who dresses in black and hides and beats the tar out of criminals. We needed that.
There's one thing that's throwing a monkey wrench in
liberated
this.
fault.
I get it. I think I get the narrative you're creating, but the one part that makes it difficult for me to think that the producer intended that is that
who cares what they intended. Artists rarely fully understand their own art. This works. This feels right.
Right. But, well, I guess to finish my point there, though, did you sympathize with Thomas Wayne when he punches...
No.
Joker? No, you didn't. Not at all. And that's the
you don't need to
bougie
sympathize.
dad who comes in with his bourgeois values and says, "You threaten my son? Pop." And that's completely justifiable in any scenario except the one that the director created, where you're actually sympathizing with him, largely because at that point you think that the Joker at least believes that he's his actual father who's abandoned him. And regardless of whether that's the truth, at least he's part of a society that's abandoned him.
Right.
Right. So
but you don't have to sympathize with Thomas Wayne.
Okay.
Thomas Wayne is the 50s maybe, and the Joker is the 70s.
So your narrative actually goes the 60s and 70s were a justifiable reaction to the 50s.
Perhaps. That's what the Joker's saying. Society created me, and I can't help but be this way. I mean, you sympathize with me. I'm a liberated guy now. But the fact that it creates Batman is why it's a defense of the 80s too.
Okay, maybe, but let's try to see if there's another way
We're saying the 80s. Giuliani was the 90s, but that's kind of the
80s, 90s is the Republican resurgence. Yeah, we'll call that one thing.
We'll call it the Reagan-Clinton, years.
Yeah. But anyway, to finish that point, is there any other way we can see the Joker? What if he's not doesn't fit into that milieu of 50s, then 60s, then 80s, 90s? What if he's a post-90s? What if Thomas Wayne represents that 90s instead? The bougie guy who now doesn't take the working class struggle seriously. He's now Reagan. And then the post-Reagan, both the Trump deplorables and the resistors are angry against the 1980s economic system, where that has led to people on opioids. That has led to the kinds of riots that we're seeing today. Not quite the 1960s riot, but analogous in some way.
Right.
And so instead of putting Thomas Wayne back in the 50s, where he kind of seems to fit, that's a metaphor for the 80s and 90s meritocratic structure that hurt both the working class of the social worker and of the black woman, but also the white guy who's now addicted to drugs on 4 or 5 different medications and
Right.
is just deplorable and works at a place where they make fun of midgets and do all of the things that a deplorable might do, say the
Right.
Trumpy thing and all of that. Do you think it's more likely that the director intended that version?
I'm saying you can read it that way, but I think it's much less likely to say the director was intending it that way because he intentionally set it in as a period piece. And in all the throwbacks to Martin Scorsese films, he has Robert De Niro in the movie, Taxi Driver, and I forget the name of that comedian movie, but this movie was basically very strongly based on those two. Taxi Driver is a character who is driven
that to me that can be interpreted two ways. It could either mean, hey, this is the 1950s guy, or hey, this 1980s, 1990s guy, the Bill Cosby type era, is the same thing as the 1950s era.
Because you can definitely see the Joker as a sympathetic opioid addict today.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
That's the first thing I got out of it.
And he's saying, okay, so we sympathize with the opioid addict today, but we're now back 20, 30 years ago. It's just it's the same story, different chapter. And what we're doing, though, it's still, though, the fact that he's what you're saying there is this right-wing backlash that's inevitable, that's going to come.
Well, here's one more piece.
Is defensible.
Maybe, but here's another piece just to throw it in there so that we can take the whole thing as I first saw it. The gun element, I think, fits in more this way as well. The deplorable guy hands him a gun, and that validates him. And then
it doesn't validate him.
No. He says, you need this, and then when he uses it, he gains that feeling of I matter. And so for me, the first thing I saw in it was the alt-right guy who goes and gets a gun and shoots up people. Suddenly he feels that type of validation as well.
He's getting the kind of liberation that the hippies were feeling as they were doing their dance.
Right. And you don't have to necessarily connect it to the hippies if that's not in the director's mind. I like how that narrative worked, but you don't have to necessarily have that, because today we have the dancers in the streets, as you were talking about in the video, with the drugged up kids protesting the climate and all that other nonsense.
Right, but they're hippies. They're trying to throw back to the 60s.
Well, they kind of look like that, but I'm just saying that the director could be saying,
this is on the left, those guys.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just saying that there's today's left. And so today's right and today's left are these two sides. There's the resist mob, and there's the deplorables, and the deplorables are addicted to a bunch of drugs. There's the resistors that are all in the streets mobbing things. Both of those are a result of the out-of-touch, meritocratic elite class that just doesn't give a crap about them. And so, shoot them. And so that justifies both Trump and whatever the guy the left decides to put up.
Beto.
Well, I'll bet the director would see Beto as another one of the sellout characters. Like, do you think Joker would vote for Beto?
No.
I
don't think Joker will vote for anybody.
Well, do you think the resist mob in Joker would vote for Beto? No. None of them support. I mean, I don't think any of the Democratic candidates quite get the angst of the left.
He's just Bernie's just too old.
Bernie, yeah, and he's sold out to the Democrats multiple times before. So whoever the left Trump is.
But that's the thing about the Joker was he wasn't trying to be the political hero. He fell into it and he liked it.
Well, right, but is the alt-right killer trying to be a political hero?
Of course.
Any more than Joker would be if he killed remember at the beginning of the movie, the little brown kids who steal his sign?
Right.
I think they were deliberately ethnic.
Right,
Because,
they were Hispanic.
Right, and I think, did they even call them savages and animals one time in the film? I think that's
the guy who gave him the gun did.
Right, and so you see the Joker angry at the animals and savages.
No, the Joker defends them.
Against who?
The guy said he gives them the gun. They're animals. They're savages.
Yeah, the deplorable gives him the gun and says.
And the Joker says, they were kids. It was stupid of me to chase them.
True. So the deplorable is actually the other guy, correct?
Yeah, not the Joker.
Right, but you see the deplorable guy give him the gun, which does eventually give him the. I mean,
that's the thing. You have the
interesting.
The Hispanic kids, and you have the yuppie business guys who both do the same thing. He's totally innocent, and they beat him up.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying. If you look at the Joker as representing kind of that deplorable class, they are kind of not always done right by, or immigration isn't always a benefit to them. Right? And in the same way, the upper class meritocrats are not a benefit to them.
You're missing my point.
What's your point?
He would be justified in joining his deplorable buddy who gave him the gun.
But he did it first. He ran after them, and they just got the best of them.
He ran after them to get the sign back.
Right. Okay.
He ran after them to be a good clown, to be a good citizen. He would have been justified in
grabbing the sign, of course, yeah.
No, he would have been justified. You would have at least sympathized with him, whether you agreed with him or not, in agreeing with the guy who's telling him they're animals. He doesn't. Just like you would agree with him if he joined the mob saying, eat the rich, kill the rich.
And he doesn't.
And he doesn't. He intentionally doesn't take either of those sides.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right.
He is what both those sides have in common. That's the point. He is what both those sides have in common. Self-actualization. I matter. People notice me. I am liberated. This feels good. Just like you'll have a right-winger and a left-winger both talk about find your identity this way. Right. Oh, I identify as this. I find my identity in being a good patriot.
I find it in screw those animals and those savages. Yeah.
It's like you're obsessed with your identity, obsessed with finding your self-actualization. And that's all the Joker cared about. That's what turned him from Arthur
And that's why both sides really would have liked him, is because they see the self-actualized individual shoot the bougie guy in the face.
Just like had he done the same thing at the beginning of the movie to the sons of immigrants,
the other guy would have liked him. Yeah, exactly right.
He's like, look, you needed to have shot them.
Huh.
But it turns out they're white Reagan yuppies. He shoots them.
Right.
But it's in self-defense.
But now the left likes him.
And now he feels good.
Yeah.
And he's joining the mob. So you're wearing this clown, you must join the mob. Oh, I don't care about those politics. I shot those guys because they were bad people.
Huh.
And I'm going to shoot you because you're a bad person too. You only brought me on here to make fun of me. That's what he says. Yeah. He doesn't kill him because it's a political statement, because he's rich. He killed him because he's mean. I wanted you to be a nice father figure to me, and all you're doing is making fun of me.
So maybe the message is everybody's kind of mean.
And if you and the self-actualizer, that is what everybody, the left and the right, our entire culture, what unites everybody is we all want liberty.
And because
we're all children of the 60s in that respect.
Yeah, but because we all want that, anyone else's meanness becomes a justification. He's stopping my identity now, and I am now justified.
Eye for an eye makes the whole world
down.
blind. We need a Batman, and we deserve the Batman that's coming.
I wonder what. Do you think he has some kind of conception of what the Batman is?
But it's just kind of like in New York. It's like people who lived in New York in the 70s and early 80s are like, look, guys, Giuliani's a good guy.
Right.
It was terrifying here. And yes, he did some stuff that probably was unconstitutional. Nobody likes to be stopped and frisked. but stop and frisk worked to a degree. The streets are way safer having had him here.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's kind of a defense. Batman is definitely Giuliani in that sense. It's like, we have created this.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure yet that the director intended any pro-Giuliani sentiment.
I don't think that's not necessarily. I mean, the fact that it's set in pre-Giuliani New York, and Batman is yet to come.
Yeah, I guess I get that a little bit.
But yeah, I think you're right that you are supposed to sympathize with the Joker as a man today, as an outcast today, and sitting in his mother's apartment on opioids.
Yeah,
today,
and looking into his screen and feeling validated by it.
And both sides want to appeal to him because they're all the same in that one sense.
Yeah, you're all looking
self-actualize.
You can be actualized by be part of our resist mob, be a part of our,
or be a
get
part of
yourself
our
a gun, and
be a part of our flag waving, whatever.
Yeah.
And in both cases, there's a way that seems right unto a man, but its end is destruction. You're going to end up the Joker, and you're going to not just end the Joker. You're creating.
I like the fact,
night.
he walks down, and as he walks down, he's happy. Walking up is a struggle. Walking down is a lot of fun.
And he's free.
Yeah.
And his voice changes. He's sitting there. He's just totally relaxed.
Yeah.
Where before everything else, he's totally anxious. He doesn't know what to do. But as the clown, he's just. And
just to put this point out there, and I know this doesn't even connect. Jordan Peterson. The difference between the way he acts and what his message is. Jordan Peterson sits like this. When he talks, he deferentially leans back. He says, stick out your chest and assert yourself. One way leads to destruction. What Jordan Peterson actually is, trying to help others and get them to, trying to bestow on them what he thinks is best. He always looks kind of like
he's about to cry and he's disheveled.
Yeah. Every time somebody says, you've helped me and you've actualized me, he
starts to cry.
He starts to cry, yeah. His demeanor is, I think, the right one. His message is giving the people that self-actualized nonsense that's going to lead them happily right to hell.
Yeah, because he's not that different from the crazy social justice warriors that he's opposing.
Yeah.
They're saying, well, I have my bizarre gender identity. You need to affirm it because it's how I self-actualize.
Well, I clean my room.
No, you need to clean your room.
Yeah.
And the person's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to self-actualize by cleaning my room and 12 steps to a highly effective person.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the right answer either.
Yeah.
But the Joker's neither of those.
Yeah.
He just wants to feel good. He just wants to not just feel good. He wants to be free of this oppressed existence that he's had.
Yeah.
And
the struggle. Done it. Get rid of the struggle.
He's active, actualized now, which is pretty good. But it still wasn't as good as Heath Ledger.
No Batman is going to top that one in my view either.
Well, the ending of The Dark Knight was just like, I've watched,
and the moral conflict that you have in that movie, top notch, where both sides know they kill the other, they survive. Think outside politics, yeah.